All right. Well, we are at 7 o'clock, and we probably ought to get rolling. I appreciate everybody who's in the audience. You know, I know it's an interesting time. So, Debbie, if you'd call the meeting to order and note attendance, please.
Noted.
Okay, thank you. All right, and if you would bring up the flag, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag salute, and we will move into the rest of our meeting. Thank you. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right, next up is our agenda review. I accept a motion to approve the agenda, or of course, if there are concerns, we can discuss those now.
I move to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I second it.
Seconded. Any discussion? With no discussion, Debbie, would you please take the vote?
Janet,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
Lori. Oh, excuse me. Jennifer.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. So first up, we have our superintendent, Scott Drew, going to give us an update. I know there's a lot been going on, and it's been a really kind of crazy few weeks for him. So Scott, without further ado.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And I'm going to share my screen right now. Let's see. Is anything coming up? Can you see Silver Falls?
We can see it, Scott.
Okay, good. Just making sure. All right, so thank you, Jonathan, for allowing me to go first. I think this is very important and probably the most important item we have that we're working on. It's receiving 110% of my attention and the attention of my team. And it's literally been a 24/7 endeavor to take in the imperfect information coming from the governor's office, the state, OHA, et cetera. And I will get into that in a minute. But I want to walk everybody through exactly where we are, what major barriers we have, and then what our priorities are, what are we working on right now. So I want to frame what I am going to present tonight in those three guiding questions. And so we'll start with number one. Where exactly are we in the process to reopen schools? Also, keep in mind that any information I share right now is subject to change given new information that comes about. And it is coming about by the hour, by the day. And so by the next time we meet and I give you another board update at the work session, this plan could change dramatically as well. So let's start out with where we are exactly in the process for turning our ship around. And before I get into that, I want to talk about what reopening means. And reopening does not mean opening up the entire school on a specific date for K-12, all students in K-12. What it means is reopening schools in a hybrid format, and that's in line with the Ready Schools Safe Learners Directive from ODE and along CDC guidelines, which says we need a minimum of 35 square feet per child, which means we can only bring in 50% of our students at one time. And so down here, I have a few notes. Hybrid model is in person with the teacher 2 days per week and independent learning activities for the other 3 days. Teachers who teach in hybrid 4 days a week, because they do half on Tuesday, Thursday, half on Wednesday, Friday, do not teach CDL. So they only teach one or the other. If there is a student, one or more, that tests positive in the hybrid model within a cohort, the entire cohort has to go back to comprehensive distance learning for 14 days. And unless the nurses determine that the teacher was exposed, students will have that same teacher, but it gets incredibly complex because we have to rely on the professional judgment of our medical experts. And so I don't have a clear, I can't get more explicit about that because we have to take each case, take it by a case-by-case basis. So where are we exactly in our plan to reopen? Well, we've established a window of time with a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks to prepare. That is the bare minimum amount of time to wake the district back up. That has nothing to do with the safety plans we've had in place all along. It only has to do with how we're synthesizing the current guidance from the governor from December 23rd and the current guidance from ODE. That alone will take 4 to 6 weeks just to prepare for. And we're waiting for additional guidance which could change everything dramatically from ODE, OHA, and OSHA by January 19th. So we are still pushing ahead because we have to identify a window of time to get up and running as soon as possible. So we're working towards that goal, but so many things can happen before that we need to navigate, that I just want to make sure I'm being clear that we are still at the mercy of our state agencies, even though our governor wants kids back in school and the metrics change from mandatory to advisory. Our goal is to bring students back systematically in clearly identified grade strands. So for example, we've had some discussions about zeroing in on kids in transition grades. So for example, and this is not set in stone, this is just for example, K-2 students are in transition. K is obvious because it's the first year in school, but first and second graders need to be learning to read by third grade. So we've got to get them back in school as soon as possible. And then the other transition grades are grade 6 and then our freshmen at the high school. Again, that's just an example of different scenarios we've been talking about, but we have to have a systematic fashion for how we're bringing students back in. What are the major barriers that we're experiencing? Well, we'll start with the governor's message. The governor has implored school districts to bring K-3 students back by February 15th. She has changed the mandatory metrics to an advisory. We have House Bill 4402, which has COVID liability protection written into law. Talk about that in a minute. ODE says that if we do not meet the advisory metrics, we must offer both comprehensive distance learning and hybrid instructional models. And that poses its own challenge in and of itself. ODE blueprints, every time we get new guidance, no matter what it is, we have to rewrite every single operational blueprint. And there are 164 items to address before we reopen. So that is a titanic task every time we get new information from our state agencies. And so I just put that in there so you realize the enormity of the task. And that's really the task at hand right now since the governor made her announcement on the 23rd. Vaccinations are another barrier. Educators are not prioritized as 1A essential. They are at the top of 1B, but the timeline is to be determined. This is a little bit of a source of frustration. I was in a meeting today with area superintendents with the Marion County Board of Health, and we received no specific timelines for when vaccinations would be through with 1A and starting with 1B. So we're just waiting to hear more on that. Of course, we want to partner with as many people as possible to make sure that we have that vaccination available to as many staff as possible. And the last barrier that we're trying to negotiate is the COVID liability protection. And that covers our insurance carrier PACE and House Bill 4402. That's only available to districts that meet the advisory metrics. And right now we are at 5 times the minimum threshold. So there's a lot to consider there. There are a lot of implications. And even though we want to get students back as soon as possible, we still have to make sure that we are thorough in studying the implications of severe financial risk should we not have some coverage there. And we have a lot of thinking around that as well. What are the reopening priorities for SFSD right now? Well, number one is we have to get the data. So we sent out surveys to all staff, all community members last Friday. The community survey will remain open till January 15th. We have the staff survey ending January 14th. And we need to use that survey data to analyze and prepare staffing scenarios to run CDL, comprehensive distance learning, and hybrid at the same time. So that is an enormous task because we need to make sure that we can staff our buildings appropriately for students to return to a hybrid model and still offer comprehensive distance learning to families that choose that. So all that will be driven by the survey data we get back. We could not have done that sooner. We need the data in real time. And it may mean that we have to restaff, if not restaff the whole district, depending on what the survey data is telling us. And it may mean that students have a different teacher in CDL or in hybrid, depending on what shakes out in the survey and what the data tells us. We are expanding our limited in-person instruction programs to reach additional students with significant need. We have met with principals beginning January 5th, and we have weekly meetings with them to check in, and we have a systematic way for how we're addressing that as well. We're working with Durham Transportation to modify bus routes. And just so you know, it takes a minimum of 3 weeks to modify those bus routes. And at the same time, we have a severe bus driver shortage. And again, as you know, we contract out with Durham Transportation. So they have the lead on that. We are exploring limited liability COVID protection. We know that must meet advisory metrics. And again, as I alluded, associated financial risk, we need to know the implications there. And number 6 is we are exploring the COVID liability waiver process. And I have parental choice here because it may end up being that in order to bring students back to a hybrid model within the window of time that we have suggested, parents may need to sign some sort of a COVID liability waiver since we were not covered with liability protection. And so I think the good news is that at least we can have some parental choice around that. If parents really want their kids back in a hybrid model, I think, you know, choice is always good. And I'm going to go back a slide to number 2, where we have the parental choice around comprehensive distance learning or hybrid. So in this plan, we do have a couple of different opportunities for parents to make a choice. And I think that's always a good thing. And lastly, what I wanted to mention is just the basics for leading through crisis, because this can be very, very messy work. Because we're always working with imperfect information. And we have to make sure that we limit the rumor mill and only focus on what the facts are telling us. And we always want to make sure that we're being truthful and telling the truth with the facts that we have, and never getting into a position where we have to walk something back. And so a lot of our work the past couple weeks has been to making sense of imperfect information that's been changing almost by the day, and listening to all sides. We're receiving just as much pressure from our community to open schools as we are to keep them closed. And we must still make sure that we're listening to all of our stakeholders as well. This is the plan that we've created so far. This is a plan that's starting to shape up more than when I first presented a few weeks ago, more of in a general nature. And then we have established contingencies, which I just talked about. And it all boils down to working this plan from this point forward. So all of this to say, we're trying to take the scribbles on the left and try to make it into a more clear picture on the right. And thank you for giving me this time. And I will go ahead and open it up to questions for the board.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, board members, if you've got any questions for Scott about this, now's a good time.
I'll just have a quick comment. No questions. Thank you, Scott. That was really comprehensive. I hope it's helped folks see how complex this decision is and all of the parameters and considerations you're having to sort of integrate into your thinking. I know folks are frustrated because they, we just keep getting different information. And so I think this is a really, really helpful way to capture all of the moving pieces, knowing that any one of them can adjust and shift at any moment. But yeah, I think this is really helpful, and we'll just keep plowing forward.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, Scott, I was just, oh, sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
I was just going to say thank you so much for making that clear. I had some questions, but I think you answered them all. And hopefully it's clear for the public to see, like Janet said, how extremely difficult it is to maneuver these waters when different things are thrown in there and you got to dodge them. And quite frankly, I think it's the best scenario for both parents who want to send their kids to school and ones that want to keep them home. I mean, there's options. So I really like that format. So thank you.
Thank you, Irv. Shelley?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to basically reiterate Janet and Irv's statements. This information that we have now is very different from what the thought process was way back in September, when all of this was new to us, to everybody in the district. And so as we moved along in the district and we learned, our medical professionals learned more about, COVID and symptoms and such. And we're just learning about so many more things, regarding, children and, their reactions to COVID and not. It's just not a one and done deal. It is extremely complex. And I'll tell you, as much that has changed since Governor Brown's statement came out on December 23rd, which seems like 100 years ago right now, I can't believe how much information has changed since then.
Yeah.
And I do agree with Irv that I think having, going down the road of having a choice, is important, and looking at all avenues. So thank you for your hard work. I would not want to be in your shoes. But yeah, I agree with my colleagues on this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Shelley.
Any other board members, comments or questions?
Yeah, I got some. I just got some comments. I just want to add, add with my fellow board members on the complexity of this situation. And I would just hope that everybody in the community, staff, parents, everyone alike, I hope they, it looks like we're really working toward a two-pronged solution, hybrid, and some folks are probably going to stay at home. And, we're kind of in a divided society right now. And don't, whatever opinion you have of this, don't try to use this as an issue to win. The other side has some points. Whatever side you're on, the other side has some good points to this. I've seen some kids struggling on online learning. I've seen some kids thriving in online learning. So I'm hoping that we can find a solution that works out for both camps. And no matter what opinion you have on this, don't impede the other side's choice for what they feel is right. So let's try to work together for something that works good for everybody and get through this. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Good presentation.
Thank you, Tom.
So Scott, I do have one question.
Sure.
So if there's parents out there that are listening or who watch this later or talk to a friend and they still have detailed questions, who do you recommend or what avenue do you recommend they follow to try to get remedy or answers to those questions?
Well, I would take each question in context. Our community, I hope they feel comfortable emailing me directly. And if I don't have the answer, I will make sure that that email gets to the person who can answer that question. So I can answer a lot of them, but I would say if they get more specific, I will certainly put them in touch with the right person. I will make this presentation available on Board Book for any community member also. And of course, every board meeting is recorded also. And then we will be getting a message out to the community soon, sort of summarizing where we are in this plan as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up and let thank you, Scott, for being so available during this really rough time that we're in. And I think the community does know that they can reach out to you for that information. And you've always been so good with your communication and outreach. And so thank you again. And community, if you have questions, just contact our superintendent. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Lori. It's our intent to respond to every single email we receive.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Scott? Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate the update. All right, we are going to move now to item number 5, which is our consent agenda. There's a few items in there, mostly, yeah, it looks like we're approving minutes from a couple of prior meetings. At this point, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Yes, Shelley.
Hi. There's a correction that needs to be made on the consent agenda. And it's already been brought to my attention. And I think Debbie, we just need to do it in public. When we voted for the budget committee members, Matthew Gaitan, my name was not put on the minutes for a yay. And so that just needs to be correct. There was 5 votes for Mr. Gaitan, but there were only 4 names on there, and mine was the missing name. So we cleared it up over email, but we should do this in public to make sure that it's correct for the minutes.
Thank you, Shelley. Yes, Jennifer.
I move to approve the consent agenda with the amended minutes as Director Nealon has requested.
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Not being any, Debbie, would you please take the vote?
Yes. Janet,
Yes.
Tom, Jonathan,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor.
Right, thanks everybody. Next up, we have our student representatives.
Hmm.
Are they on?
Hello.
Here we go.
Hello, everyone. I am
Evan.
Evelyn Morales Sierra, the SHS School Board Representative, as well as the ASB Diversity Officer at Silverton High School.
And I'm Maddie Manning, the Assistant School Board Representative at Silverton High School and the Assistant Diversity Officer.
And we're going to start off by giving a little recap of how our clubs are doing, beginning with our environmental club. They are currently meeting regularly, as well as planning projects for the spring quarter.
FBLA is currently preparing for the first level of career-related competitive events, which will take place regionally on February 1st and 12th. They're hoping to rank among the top 10 in their events to be able to compete in state in April.
FFA members have been actively participating in virtual competitions with both beginning and advanced teams placing first in the district, and then the advanced teams going on to win second in state. They're currently preparing applications for the CFF degree, as well as preparing for competitions in early February.
Interact Club has been very active these last few months, meeting every other Wednesday and listening to guest speakers, including Silverton's own mayor and a district nurse. They've also been very involved in SACA, helping them out with their holiday boxes. In the next few weeks, plan on teaming up with Key Club to put on a food drive.
The Oregon Battle of the Books Club at Silverton has been keeping their book club thriving. Because of the restrictions on competition, they have decided to continue forward and read a book per month on the OBOB list and discuss it as a book club.
Through the STEM Club, future engineers have had the opportunity to attend a workshop held by the College of Engineering at Oregon State University and are excited to attend future events such as Women in Engineering, which will be held in February.
And last but not least, ASB has been working on different ways to remain engaged with the student body. We're also helping students through any issues they might be having. As of now, we are focusing strongly on mental health and promoting it through our social media, inviting students to keep it in mind and ways to take care of their mental health, as well as reminding them that they aren't alone.
That is all for our clubs and activities. Multiple SHS outdoor sports have continued to prepare to practice for their sports seasons. Outdoor fall sports are set to officially begin on February 22nd.
But before we wrap up tonight, we finally just wanted to sincerely thank all our board members for your service to our schools and communities. We thank you for the time and effort you put into our kids, and thanks for being role models of service. We send a huge heartfelt thanks to you tonight. Thank you for having us once again, and go Foxes.
Thank you guys, and go Foxes, and thanks for the notes and the t-shirts. That was amazing. Thank you. All right. Well, let's see. We are now ready for our principal's report. We have Robert Frost up this month. Welcome.
Jonathan, I just wanted to say a few words if I could, because Robert Frost, of course, has an interim principal this year, Leslie Carsley. And I wanted to start off by saying that Leslie is a real principal's principal. Leslie is the mentor of one Dan Bush, and she has many other principals that she's mentored over the years, and her what she's done at Robert Frost to continue the collaborative culture and being a sounding board for staff and making staff feel safe and comfortable with the plan going forward. And I just wanted to say thank you to Leslie for that. We also have Liz Limbird, teacher leader at Robert Frost, helping with the presentation today, since Liz has a vast history with Robert Frost, and Robert Frost has some very, very exceptional and unique systems that are going on to serve kids of all needs. So just wanted to make sure that I led off with that piece.
Thank you.
Okay, is Leslie Carsley here? Thanks, Scott, for that. That was really kind. Leslie Carsley, you're starting us off. Are you with us? Okay.
I did see her on here and her mic was working earlier.
Yes, I heard her.
There she is.
Okay.
Okay, so our first slide is saying thank you for your commitment and dedication to helping Silver Falls be the best school district to teach and learn. And as a way of honoring your service to the Silver Falls School District, there's a token of our appreciation with a note from all of the Robert Frost staff, just to thank you for all that you do, just for those years of service that you have given us. And I just ask that you see Debbie to make arrangements to pick those up. And again, thank you for your commitment, your dedication, and your service.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in to talk a little bit about Robert Frost, the home of the Bears. And just first of all, before I get started, a special thank you to Leslie, who's jumped into at this very unique time to help us. And Dan, thank you so much for bringing her to us. It's such a blessing. She's exactly what we needed at exactly the right time. So I can speak on behalf of the staff to say how much we really appreciate Leslie. At Robert Frost, we have 346 amazing students. This is just one of the classes of 14 general classes and 3 special programs classes. So we have a large school. And we're a school-wide Title I school. We also house a basic skills program, the structured learning program, and functional skills program. So we have a lot of things happening at Robert Frost. Behind all of that, we have 67 devoted staff members. And I cannot get started enough to say how much these staff members make the difference at Robert Frost. So I'm going to get choked up. They are phenomenal. Each month we have a staff who's honored by getting a monthly award, and we also have a weekly spotlight to honor each staff member on all of their hard work and effort that they do to put in incredible amounts of work and love into the students. The leadership team at Robert Frost is sort of the backbone of our school. In our leadership team, we have a representative from each grade level and also from our classified staff and from our special ed department. So each of those representatives communicate with their team and help make school decisions. So everyone is in the loop and everyone is part of any decision that we make together. We also, this is something that we did this year, we were able to get some presents and love on some families, 4 families, and hopefully they found some joy and happiness in this. Definitely a family feel at Robert Frost. Jenny Matska is going to talk a little bit about the garden. Jenny, are you in here?
She should be now.
Okay, great.
I'm on. All right, well, I'm a 5th grade teacher at Robert Frost, and I'm also been the garden coordinator and been involved with the garden since I got hired in 2008. And actually this year I'm co-garden coordinator with Tress Stadley, who's been a great partner in all of this. And Robert Frost actually has a long history of having a school garden, and it's kind of unique to us. And I just want to give you a quick little overview of that, and then this great project that we have going that will hopefully be up and ready for the kids when they return this spring. So the Robert Frost Garden, I was actually doing a little research on this. It was established in 1995, so about 25 years ago. And with some of the similar goals that we have for gardens today, you know, just to integrate science and provide different a different environment for kids to learn in. And then, and you can do the next slide, Liz. So that was the original. I found this old picture. This was the original garden. So I don't know if some people might even recognize some people in there. And then in 1998, so the next slide, they, over time, that garden started to deteriorate a little bit. And so they did a revitalization project in 1998. And this is what our current garden pretty much looks like. Well, not quite. This is what it looks like. Good timing with the slide. So I have never seen the garden look like this before. If you can believe it was weeded down in the fall. And when we came back last spring after we were gone from school, and in June, this is what the garden looked like. You can't even see, anything in there. It was amazing. It was taller than I am, the weeds. So we also had lost a little momentum and those kinds of things, and lost some supplies and funding. So we were kind of in a standstill, trying to use the garden as much as we can. But then a community organization called Sustainable Silverton Coalition came, and they said, can we help? We'd like to partner with a local entity. As we were interested in your school garden. And of course we said yes. So they provided some resources, and this is the long story short, what happened by the middle of summer. It looked like this. And the picture on the right is where it kind of currently looks like. And we are able to now kind of fulfill that vision of not just revitalizing it like it is here, but expanding it. So currently it's about 2,700 square feet. And the perimeter fencing is really rotting and falling down. So we're going to do kind of a stage one and add on to this about 1,200 square feet and replacing some of the existing fencing. And so with some help from local business donations and some grants that we wrote, and with our help with our community partner, we are off and rolling. And hopefully this week we will be getting those post holes dug if the rain stops a little bit here. And hopefully by the next slide, you can go to the next one. Hopefully by the next, by June, it'll be a really nice expanded space for at least kind of the vision is at least 2 classes could be out there now with the distance or the social distancing requirements right now, at least for 1 classroom. But we'll have 2 entry points. And so it's kind of serendipitous this has happened at this time. So it's perfect for being able to do this project and provide an outdoor learning space for our students in the spring. Hopefully it will be coming back in some capacity, and now we'll have a different environment to learn in that's good for the social distancing also. So hopefully, by spring we'll have a nice peaceful place for students to enjoy and learn, and it works for the situation we're in.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, we have a few students that are here, and I'm going to ask them some questions. So, before I ask them the questions, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. So we have a 3rd grader, we have a 4th grader, and we have 2 5th graders. We'll start with Weston.
Hi, my name is Weston, and I'm in Miss Chapin's class.
And what grade are you in, Weston?
3rd grade.
Great. And our 4th grade?
Hi, I'm Abby, and I'm in Miss Stadley's 4th grade class.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Elijah, and I'm in Mrs. Bruckner's 5th grade class.
And we have one more. Is she here? Okay. Is Madeline here? I have a weird view, so I can't see her.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Madeline, and I'm in Miss Schott's 5th grade class.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and you guys had a chance to kind of practice this, but we'll start with Weston, and then we'll go around. So first of all, what makes Robert Frost a great place to be and learn? So what do you think, Weston? What do you think makes Robert Frost a great place to be and learn?
Robert Frost makes a great place to learn, great place to be is nice teachers.
All right. Which teachers are some of those teachers you're thinking of?
Miss Lindbergh, Miss Chapin, Miss Olson, Miss Kim, and Miss Church.
All right, you've got lots of teachers to list. Thanks, Weston. Okay, go ahead and mute yourself up. Abby, what about you? What makes Robert Frost a great place to be and learn for you?
I think Robert Frost is a great place to be and learn because of the teachers. I feel like they go the extra mile to get me the help that I need when I need it.
Thanks, Abby. Elijah, what about you? What about you for what makes Robert Frost a great place?
I think it's a good place to learn because it works around the virus. It's organized. I know exactly what to do and when I need to do it. And there are standards like keeping your camera on because I like to see my friends.
All right. Madeline?
What makes Robert Frost a great place to be and learn is you can get moved into easier classes or harder classes if you need to be.
All right. Thanks, Madeline. So they kind of try to meet your needs where you are. Awesome. Okay, last question. So what are some strategies you use to help you be the best learner possible? So what are some things that you do to help you be the best learner? Okay, Weston, what about you? What do you do?
My first strategy is when I use my planner and I'll write things down and check them off and put stickers on them.
Is that what your planner looks like? That's cool.
And my second strategy is every Friday I get a surprise reward lunch if I get my school work done every day.
That's so cool. You're lucky. All right. Thanks, Weston. I need to get one of those planners for my kids. Okay, Abby.
Some strategies that I use to be the best learner possible is following along with my teacher and listening really carefully. It also, I really think it helps to have a good organized workspace so it's easy to get to the supplies I need when I need them.
Great. Elijah?
Some strategies that I use to help me be the best learner is to write down tasks, take important notes, ask for help when needed, and I also like to double check if I'm not 100% what the answer is by doing the question again.
Nice, Elijah. Okay. Madeline, last question. What are some strategies you use to help you be the best learner possible?
Some strategies I use to be the best learner possible are paying attention in class so I understand my work and doing all my classwork.
Great. I bet you guys are all awesome students. Thanks for coming and visiting. You guys are free if you want to stay and hang out and watch the rest of this, or if you want to log off, I know you've been on for a while, you're welcome to do that too. So
Thank you, boys and girls.
thanks, you guys. Okay. So just a little bit more about Robert Frost. So for the strategic goal of the district is that each student is on track to graduate every year. And so I'm going to talk about some of the ways that Robert Frost is working towards supporting that goal. Number one is the instruction. We have awesome teachers and they're all doing amazing things in their classroom virtually and when we're in person. This is an example of a teacher's Canvas page, and all this is handmade and they work very hard. This is some packets that they can take, kids can take home, and the process to put all those together is also a lot of work, but they do it for the students. Scott referenced some of the work that we do at Robert Frost and some of the teams that we have. We've been told that our school is kind of like a well-oiled machine, and I have to credit Leslie Roach, our former principal. She really got us started in our organization to make sure that we had systems in place to meet the needs of all students. And especially when you have a large school, normally over 400 students, you want to make sure that you're reaching every student. And one of the ways that we were able to do that with getting started was the data team. And what we do on data team is we review the STAR data and look at all the students. We highlight the students and identify those students that are needing intervention in math or reading or possibly attendance and behavior. And that team, it's a group of all of the teachers at the grade level. We also have the specialists that are there to discuss students and their needs. Oh, look at the strategic goal number, hashtag exclamation point. That should be a 1, is our care team. The care team, teachers, and if they notice that there's something going on with a student, they initiate reviewing that student and discussing them further. And at that care team at the table, there's the specialists, and you might have the behavior specialist and the classroom teacher and all the interventionists. And we look at, individual students and what interventions they're already doing and other interventions that they could be doing. And then we come up with some next steps for those students to kind of see, is this something else that we need to identify and figure out further what's going on? Also, we have a time in our day in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. It's called What I Need or When time. And we have reading intervention, math intervention, and we're sort of filling the gaps at that point. And it's all data driven and identifying what students individually need. And that's connected to the data teams and the care teams. We have the LRC, or the Learning Resource Center. They're making accommodations, modifications. This is all towards the strategic goal that all students will graduate. And so those students that have an IEP, we want to make sure that they're accessing grade level curriculum, and they're using small groups to do that and checking in on students. In our SLP as well, these kids are learning some self-regulation skills so they can rejoin their peers and access the grade level curriculum. Also, they're filling in some gaps in that structured learning program in the SLP. Our library and tech, they're doing keyboarding skills, slideshows, creative coding, getting them ready for graduating, thinking about high school. And our ELD class as well, they're reviewing, supporting academic language and vocabulary so they can access that grade level material. Okay, Ms. Carsley is going to talk about the strategic goal number 2.
Right, and as you know, our school goals really focus on 2 indicators of that strategic goal number 2, and those 2 indicators would be 2A, school communities are inclusive and free of bullying and intimidation, and also indicator 2B, where students experience positive connections with caring adults. Each student has the social and emotional learning skills to navigate the world, and we do use that social emotional learning district curriculum to meet those needs. What happens is that curriculum takes place during morning meetings, and then it's embedded throughout the day, either online or in person, hopefully when we come back. Positive behavior intervention supports. This is a program that we use at Robert Frost to improve school safety and also promote positive behavior. This is a set of ideas and tools that the staff use to improve the behavior of our students. The Robert Frost staff have needed to be very creative with the implementation of PBIS this year because of being virtual, but the building team worked on creating expectations for virtual learning. So as with any plan, we've had to make adjustments along the way, but it really is working for our staff and our students. Teachers have created class rewards that can be done virtually. Some of them might be show and tell, a virtual lunch with my teacher and a friend, even a virtual field trip can take place. A couple of months ago, the school was able to purchase PBIS rewards, which really has helped the staff be able to easily recognize students who are on task during the learning time. And it also helps them keep track of the student pause, which are the rewards that students earn. And we're even able to still create some school-wide student rewards. For school-wide rewards, once the student finds out what the reward is and they know how many paws that reward is going to cost, They turn in that amount of pause to their teacher, and then they're able to enjoy the school-wide reward. One of the rewards we did in December was a Google Meet. And so students who wanted to do a Google Meet, they turned in 50 paws and they got to have a Google Meet with 5 of their friends. And of course, there was a staff member that monitored that. And that was really good because kids are wanting to connect with one another. And so this was one way at the school that we could make this happen virtually. We also are getting prepared for our February reward, which is going to be virtual painting. And that's going to be led by 2 of our staff members. And all of the supplies are going to be purchased and given to the students. And they'll want, you know, if they want to spend their paws for that reward. Our counselor, Bruce Elliott, he has also put together online lessons about character traits, making good choices, and working with others. Positive connections with students. I think this is one of the phenomenal things that the staff at Robert Frost do. They work hard to have those personal connections with their students. And like I said, from my observations during the 5 weeks that I have been able to connect with people at Robert Frost, this is a real strength of these folks, both licensed and classified personnel. We're one family unit. And so if you see somebody who needs support, these folks are right there able to help in whatever way they can. Another thing that we have really found is those positive connections and that positive rapport affects the students academically, socially, and emotionally. And Weston talked about the many teachers who he's been involved with that he has those positive connections with. Well, you heard Liz talk about the well-oiled machine, and that's due to the work of Leslie Roach. Leslie also wrote a school wellness award grant to ODE, and through her great work, the grant was written, and ODE notified us in November that Robert Frost Elementary was the recipient of this grant. So we have received $2,000 from them. We also have this beautiful banner hanging in the foyer, as well as a very nice plaque that have both been prominently displayed. And as it says in the slide, that this will help improve our outdoor and indoor play opportunities for our students. So they're out and about getting exercise, either in the gymnasium or outside.
That's all we have today. I just really want to emphasize the amazing work that the staff does. That well-oiled machine could not be possible without the intense work that goes behind the scenes from everybody, all of them. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about our amazing school.
And I'd like to just piggyback on that by really wanting to commend the diligence and the commitment to students and their families that the Robert staff in large demonstrates on a daily basis. And I also want to thank Liz Limbird and Jenny Matska for helping with the presentation tonight, as well as our 4 students. Also want to remind you, this is the 50th anniversary of Robert Frost Elementary, and we're going to be planning a celebration in the spring. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like. It may be a drive-by anniversary, but we'll keep you in the loop and let you know.
Thanks, everybody. Just as a heads up, I got bounced out of Zoom for about the last 5 minutes of that. I just got back in, so apologies for that. Jennifer Traeger, heads up, if I get bounced again, you may need to take over. Okay, well, thanks again, guys. I heard almost all of that, and then just at the end when you were making your closing statements, great work there, I appreciate it. All right, we are now on to our first public comment. And as a reminder, you to get to speak need to email Debbie Valoff. The instructions are on the agenda and on board book, and her email address is valoff_Debbie@silverfalls.k12.or.us. So if you'd like to speak, please email her. And while we're waiting for possible requests to queue up, I will go ahead and read our statement. We are glad you are here and welcome you to address the board at this time with your ideas, opinions, questions, concerns, or compliments. Please be certain to sign in, or well, in this case, again, you're always going to be signed in. Sign in before you present. Remember that we all model the way for our students, and we ask that you share your thoughts in a respectful way. The board's role during public comment is to listen. Rarely will you get an immediate response to information. If follow-up is necessary, we will redirect you to our superintendent or direct you to our superintendent to do that. In order to ensure equity among speakers, the board will limit remarks to 3 minutes per individual. If a group of 3 or more wishes to appoint a representative to speak on its behalf, the board will extend the time for remarks to 5 minutes. And there is a second public comment later in the meeting. And then Jennifer has been the one who normally gives the warnings. So Jennifer, do you have a plan that you're planning to do as far as telling people tonight?
Yeah, I think that I'll just verbally say 30 seconds and then time's up, because it's so hard to know if people can see me or not. So I hate to jump over you, but I'll try to be as brief as possible with those reminders.
Thank you. All right, so do we have anybody asking to speak tonight?
No, I have no requests.
Okay. Well, there is a second public comment, so I guess unless one comes in right away, we'll go ahead and move on. So next up, did Michelle join? No, there you are. I see you on. Okay, so we have SFEA up next. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. So I have actually prepared a slideshow for tonight. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to share that. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jonathan.
And
you and Jennifer.
I can see it.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Okay, well, obviously there's a lot going on right now in the world of, well, just in the world in general, but with the changes from Governor Brown's announcement over Christmas break. And so your teachers have been busy just, working with the district office and trying to figure out what all of this looks like and where to go from here. And so that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to talk with everybody about tonight. But before I get into that, I just wanted to follow suit and say a big thank you to all of our school board members. We know that this is often a thankless job, and so you get to hear a lot of it tonight, but we really do appreciate you, and we know that this is a lot of work, and good grief, during a pandemic, you guys have spent so many extra hours on these Zoom meetings and out of your time and time away from families, and so we just wanted to add to that thank you, and say keep it up. So thank you. Okay, so there have been just so many different conversations that are going on, whether it's with individual people, whether it's online. I've seen a lot of stuff going on Facebook where people are questioning what the school district is going to do and how things should be done, and whether schools should open up for hybrid instruction. I was reminded by a colleague today that our schools are open. They're just not open, for full-time in-person with students. So there's just a lot of questioning, a lot of conversations going on. And so I wanted to start out tonight just by kind of giving a reminder of who SFEA is, that it's not Michelle Stadley. I am the elected representative of my fellow teachers, but this is not the Michelle Stadley show. I share what my colleagues want me to, what they want me to share. And so just to kind of start out, who are we? We're 93% of your licensed staff. We are teachers, librarians, counselors, and specialists. We work in every building in Silver Falls School District. We are educators who want to be with our students. And we are also individuals who want to be safe at work. And so all of those pieces are complicated, and everything about this situation is complex. And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective from your educators based on that new information, based on a survey that we put out last week, and the information that we have gotten from our membership. So these are the things that we know to be true right now. First of all, we know that all of our educators would rather be in person with students. This is not what we signed up for, to be online educators during a pandemic. And, any of us could have moved into online education prior to COVID-19 because it's been a thing for quite a while. But we all want to be in person with students. That's what we trained for. That's why we got into this profession. However, because we are in the middle of a global pandemic, it's not that simple. And so before SFEA has ever put out any sort of position on, what our teachers want, or what, what we think as a collective, we always want to get information from our membership before we represent them at any point in time. So recently, we put out a survey that was a little bit more extensive, and I will share some of that information at a later date, but I just wanted to give kind of a baseline for you guys right now, just so you know that as of right now, based on the current circumstances, this is what our membership is saying. So in a recent survey, 70% of our SFEA member respondents indicated that they're uncomfortable returning to the hybrid model at this time. And that is with 80% participation in the survey. So we had 180 educators respond to this survey, and 70% of them indicated that they were not comfortable returning to the hybrid model, which means that 30% of them are. So we do have some teachers, as Scott was talking about earlier in his presentation, that are ready to be back in the classroom. It's just not the majority. About half of our members are or live with someone who are in the high risk category for COVID-19. So that obviously adds another complicated layer to this situation. For us as educators, one of our top priorities for our students is that they're receiving continuity in their education and in the care that they're getting from the school district. And so for a lot of kids right now, that continuity is distance learning. And so from the perspective of a lot of our teachers, one of our fears, just so that you know this, is that when we return to hybrid, that if the pandemic isn't under better control in our local area, that it's going to just be this constant yo-yo. And so that's something that we are trying to work with the district to kind of figure out how we can deal with that, because that the not knowing if you're going to be teaching in person day to day or if you're going to be online, students not knowing if they're going to be going to class, parents not knowing if they're going to have their kids in school or out of school. that makes for a complicated situation for everybody. So the situation that we're all in, a global pandemic, is continually changing along with the guidance that we're getting from the federal, state, and local levels. We figured that out on December 23rd when we got the governor's new changes, and we know that on January 19th, more changes are going to be coming out. So we have definitely learned to be flexible and definitely learned to roll with the changes, but also, you know, we have to be thoughtful and are very thankful for leaders who are thoughtful in navigating these changes in this process. So our current metrics, which are now advisory rather than mandatory, are pretty high in Marion and Clackamas County, which I'm sure this is not new information to anyone. But the tricky part about it is what our superintendent shared earlier, that our school district isn't covered for liability if we don't meet the metrics. So we just wanted to share out this information so that everybody is working, you know, everybody's working with the same numbers. And so in order to phase in the hybrid model, in order to be meeting the metrics, the 2 counties that our district are in need to be below the 100 cases per 100,000 people over 2 weeks and below the 8% test positivity rate. And currently Marion County, as Scott said earlier, is like 5 times higher than that with 563 cases. And this was as of the 4th, because those numbers update on Tuesdays. And so this is the most recent one, and we should be getting new numbers tomorrow. So that's still very high, high numbers. And finally, our SFE executive board, we are going to continue to work collaboratively with the district leadership in this situation where the target is constantly moving. So I've seen a lot of conversations talking about, you know, why doesn't the district have this figured out? They've had 9 months to figure this out. Well, the target is constantly moving. There are new situations that are coming up all the time. And so it's not that simple. And if you don't work in education, a lot of times you don't understand all of the complexities that are involved. We just wanted to take a minute as well to appreciate the positive working relationship that we have with Scott and Dan and Leslie and with Lori in our weekly meetings. So we've been working together. We've been meeting every week since the beginning of summer. And through that time spent together, we've really built a relationship of collaboration and mutual respect. And so it really is our hope that we can continue that and figure out how to navigate this situation in a way that is positive and that really meets the needs of all the different stakeholders in our district. We also want to recognize and appreciate all of the extra work that our administrators are doing throughout this challenging time. Like leading during a global pandemic, there's nothing normal about that, and there's nothing prescribed about it. They didn't learn how to do this when they were in school getting their admin licenses. So just know that your teachers recognize that, and we really appreciate the leadership that you guys have shown during this time. We're going to continue to reach out to our members, and we're going to continue to represent their best interests in these conversations as we move forward. And that's what I've got for you tonight. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them if I can figure out how to stop sharing.
Thanks, Michelle. Any board members have any questions for Michelle?
There we go.
I certainly don't have any questions, but I want to just say thank you for that presentation. I deeply appreciate it as a board member. So thank you, Michelle, for the work.
Thanks, Lori.
Yes, Jan.
I just wanted to thank you as well for really, your information was really helpful to see your percentages and your statistics. It's good to see some facts. But mostly I wanted to thank you just for the spirit of collaboration and working together and being good teammates and good partners. There's no way we're going to figure this out if we aren't all pulling on the same end of the rope. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And kudos to all of you for all of your work.
Thanks, Janet.
Okay. Well, thank you. So next up, we have got OSEA with Michelle Livingston. Michelle, you're muted currently.
I unmuted, but I don't have video. Maddie,
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you start my video? If you want to see my face, I don't care.
Try again.
Okay. Hey, there I am. Hi, everybody. Oh, why is that still showing up? Okay. Okay. So, funny thing, I was part of that class at Robert Frost in 1995 that pioneered the garden. So that was kind of cool to see that it's like coming back around. Yeah, that was cool. So I just wanted to say, well, I have a couple things. We're going to have a classified employee of the year ballots coming out, for our people, but I don't know if you guys if there's a First Citizens banquet not happening or not, but we're still going to continue with our, yearly appreciation. So, yeah. I was going to read a bunch of snippets from emails and comments, and we just had our chapter meeting and most of the hot topic was about like reopening and all that. But Scott, your presentation was amazing and it answered pretty much any questions we had, or not answered, but showed us where your thinking is coming from and how to roll through it. So that was amazing. The main kind of highlights from them is, we all have this urge to get back in person. A lot of our, or more, more in person, a lot of our staff on the classified side is coming in and has been coming in. So we're already, there and feeling like, let's do it, but safely. There's a big urge for the, let's have safetiness, and a lot of it was answered in Scott's presentation too, but there was a lot of vaccine questions, like for the COVID vaccine, is it going to be mandatory? Is it going to have to be disclosed if we do it? Is the district paying for it, or doing like we do for the flu shots where there's like a, clinic day, go get your shot? And I'm pretty sure insurance would be paying for the vaccine. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of like people just have questions. I'm not really hearing if they're wanting it to be mandatory or wanting it to not be, but I know we have the waiver sign thing coming out for parents. So I know you guys are working on that also. I also had a couple people wondering about the high risk category of staff members or students, and if where they're going to be at with that, if they're going to be still have to come in or if they need to stay more virtual. So that's another thing to kind of think about there. We also just want to keep the ball rolling and returning back to in school safely. And there's a lot of, most of these comments were all, or concerns were a lot about, there is Lippy kids coming in now, but so they're getting some help and doing, not doing better, but getting engaged more, but then they're still, struggling a little bit. But there's also those teachers and staff members come home to their own children that are not Lippy students, and they're struggling and not falling behind. Just still struggling socially, emotionally, mentally. So it is kind of, I was gonna say we need to work on like engaging kids more, but it sounds like Robert Frost at least is they're having the rewards with the students and more teacher engagement, and let's show the kids how important they are and that we're all in this. So that's pretty much what I have. Oh yeah. We had a big thank you to Scott and Dan for being, and the district and leaders. You guys have been so transparent through this whole thing. And just, since they both started as, superintendent assistant. But this year with planning, reopening, as we've had to adjust to it all year long. And we've also got the K-5 Mark Twain, Robert Frost transition happening. And there's been a lot of transparency there. And, I just, in conversations in the hallways and, at our meetings and whatever, there's a lot of people that are just glad that their thoughts can be heard. And we know you guys are processing them, rolling through it. It's not just shuffled under the table, So, I think that's all I had. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'll take those.
Any questions or comments for Michelle?
Just thanks for coming. Always good to hear from you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Michelle.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for being invested in our students. Your comments really showed that's what we're all about as students. So thank you.
Yeah, we're always trying to aim for the students and the safety in general anyway, but yeah, maybe next time I'll have a cool statistic slideshow like Michelle did, because that was good too.
Well, thank you. We really do appreciate it.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Next up, we are on to our discussion items. Now, tonight's discussion items center around a series of policy revisions that OSBA is recommending, and we've got a number of them to work through. I believe there's, I think, 8 tonight on the list. And sort of up first, I know they're just listed in order here, but I wanted to spend actually a minute with the board having just a conversation about how we really wanted to tackle these, right? Because I think our normal policy says we're going to get a policy update. We're going to have 3 readings. Typically, those are 3 regular board meeting readings, and with adoption on the 3rd. And that's a long process if we've got a lot of policy updates, and there are a number of them. I think Debbie or Scott said over 100 anyway. So there's a number coming at some point. And so we have some options, and I just wanted to get your guys' feedback in terms of how we might approach it. And I'll just take a minute to lay out some of the considerations, right? So one of them is going to be this question of, do we need to have 3 readings for each of these? Many of these changes are quasi boilerplate, they're OSBA recommended wording and or legal changes to things. So do we need 3? That's one question. Do we want to tackle them in batches where we say these 8 and we talk about them, have a first, second, possibly 3rd reading, adopt them, and then move to a next batch of 15 or whatever that list is? That's another option. And I guess I really wanted to get your guys' feedback before we dug into the specifics of any given one of these policies, because I think there are some options on the table to maybe optimize this a little bit, but only if the board is in favor. So feel free to jump in with thoughts at this point if you've got them.
My thought, and I'd like to hear from the others, if these policies are legal, I mean, have legal edits or changes, then I'm not sure why we need to go through 3 readings. And I just want to know how the rest of the board feels about that, because I think that would, I mean, if it's legal, it is. And so I'm not sure we have we can't fuss around that or step around that. So I like your option of, depending on the nature of the policy, if we can just read through those and agree as a board and then move through that batch more effectively. I believe that was one of your options, Jonathan. I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
write it.
you're right. I mean, one clear option is we could choose to have maybe only 2 readings so that we do a first one, it gets out there, the public has a chance to look at it too. We all have a month to make sure we're not overlooking anything. And then
Right.
approve it on a second reading. I don't think for a lot of these that's unreasonable.
That's where I'm at, but
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
you bet.
Yes, Jen?
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable, as long as it's, if it's, I don't know to what extent we're constrained by law or just good practice. You know, in some ways, there are some circumstances under which you have to have 3 readings, but I think that might just, maybe that's just the legislature, I'm not sure. So I would want to make sure that we're okay in abbreviating that. And then I think at least 2, and I guess I would like to be able to keep the option open if there's a policy comes up that is sort of particularly tricky, or we have some concerns with it, that we give ourselves the opportunity to you know, have it come up a 3rd time.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable approach. And I did look into a policy, and the way the policy is written is it implies that normally, right, I think is the wording or something to that effect, we will have 3. But depending on, you know, need, we can do it in less, including on first reading actually, but I'm not necessarily advocating for that. So I think it does fall within our purview regarding the 3rd reading, at least I think. And if anybody disagrees, let me know. Yes, Jennifer.
Can I share my screen because I have the policy up so that we can see it?
Yeah.
Could you zoom that a little bit, Jennifer? That's perfect, thank you.
I'm rereading it myself. I'm trying to remember where I saw the part about it normally being 3, but I haven't.
Well, it says the 1, 2, 3 steps, the numbered steps are there. And then at the bottom, there's the corollary.
Yeah, when in the best interest of business. I thought there was somewhere else that I read something that talked about it being normal. That could have been on another policy as well.
Yeah, it looks like at that last sentence that we have the option.
When in
In the interest of the district. Yeah. Yeah.
What is the total count of policies we're trying to get through, and by when? Is there a time constraint for us that we're trying to meet?
There's no real time constraint. We originally thought by the end of the year, but with everything that's going on and, you know, our world constantly being turned upside down, I think we'll do our best. But we're looking well into next year, probably. And there, as far as we know, there aren't any policy updates that are going, if we don't update them, are going to hinder us in our work. So that's good too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think, and Scott, to the quantity, she asked about the quantity, and I think.
Sorry, I believe there's 180.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, the policy updates have not been done in a couple of years.
Right.
Right. I mean, you know, another option for the board to discuss is to literally have, you know, 50 of them roll through with 3 readings, right? I mean, we could do that. So just keep that in mind as well, but it's a lot to be considering. Yeah, Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm for just giving them 2 readings. I think it's in the best interest of the district. I think it definitely qualifies that to do that. And And if there's one that requires more thought or discussion, I think a board member, we can just, I think everyone will gladly agree to pull one to the side and give it a third reading. But I think everyone needs to, OSBA is recommending a lot of these. They go through them first, and even if we were for some reason to overlook something, a flaw in a policy, and that pops up 6, 8, 17 months down the road, we can simply change a policy. Just because we approve a policy today doesn't mean we can't change that policy 3 months from now if an error shows up. So I think we're fine. I'd like to just move these through.
Yeah, I think Shelley, you have a question too, but sorry, I just saw his hand first.
I can wait.
Yeah, Jonathan, I've gone through all of these, and myself personally, I don't see any changes necessary. So I would be willing to adopt all of them, unless, like Tom said, somebody has an issue with them. Then let's pull that one out and do a second reading on that one. But if we all have an agreement on the rest of them, let's adopt them.
Yeah, thanks, Irv. I think it does fall within our purview to do it. I heard Janet, and I'll share my concern. I think that having a second reading would give us the opportunity to make sure that the public also had that same exposure to any of the changes, just in case somebody else saw something. Typically, I mean, yes, it's on board book, and yes, they can see it, but having that extra time could make a difference there. So I'm personally leaning towards a second one, but I do get your point. Shelley, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we had a very really healthy discussion about this in our policy work group. And we do have, there's a lot of them. This is the spreadsheet. I don't know if everybody can see it, but this is the spreadsheet, and it's many pages long that we have to figure out. And they are categorized as the most highly recommended, all the way down to this needs to be looked at, but it's not in the extreme category to get it done. So I do like the idea of bringing 8 to 10 at least minimum, if not at the most 20 a month, to the board a month in advance, giving it to us to read, give us some time to read it, go through, and do a first reading, especially if they are strictly OSBA updates, and then either doing a second reading and allowing the public to take a look at it. I do agree with Jonathan on that, and Janet's idea, and then possibly making a decision after the second reading, unless somebody needs to pull one out. So yeah, I think that's the best of both worlds. We're not rushing it, and we're not taking 3 months to pass adopt a policy that's OSBA updated, legislative updated. So anyway, I think that's the middle of the road, and I think that's pretty safe. So there's a lot to go through, but getting them in advance, letting us read them at home, being prepared, coming to a meeting prepared to say, yep, let's do this, or let's pull this, let's pull that, let's adopt these. That's what's going to make this a well-oiled machine. To get through these. So if we all do our homework and read those and make sure we are ready when we come to a meeting, then that's going to make not only our lives easier as board members, but also the policy work group as well. So we can get on a roll to getting these to the board and getting them passed. So.
Thank you. Jennifer.
I'm probably, it sounds like I'm most uncomfortable with modifying the procedure from the policy, which indicates a third, first, second, and third reading, mostly because, I mean, for practicality, yeah, I get it. I get, passing a policy or adopting a policy on a first or second reading. But on the process side, I think that 3 readings gives the public the maximum amount of opportunity to also engage with those policies and give us feedback. I do remember several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, when we were going through a process, there was something that was recommended by the policy committee. Basically, they were recommending OSBA's policy, and Silver Falls had a real custom policy, and it was very different from the OSBA policy. And our process of having the 3 readings brought that out, and everybody agreed that the custom policy was the one that we should keep. So I guess that there could be merit to having the three readings in terms of public engagement. I guess I would feel better about approving something on the second reading if the policy work group had already provided their recommendation, if they had gone through and recommended them. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Shelley, go ahead. I see your hand.
I wanted to respond to Jennifer on that. So I do remember that situation, or a couple situations. And I think that for a little more clarification, some of the policy revisions that OSBA recommends can be as minimal as a legislative mandate update, as a law that doesn't really customize or change the mold of the language for the district. But then there are also recommendations from OSBA sometimes where they want you to delete the whole policy and replace it with another one. And I think maybe that's where sometimes it can get the customization of Silver Falls School District, the language that we want to put in to mold to our district, can make it a little bit not so, we don't want that. We want our own. I can't think of the word, but anyway. So I think there's a degree of difference in what she said, and I think most of the ones that I feel like I can say this safely, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, or Tom, is I think the policies that we want to bring forward to the board for a second reading and maybe adoption in the consent agenda for the third reading is just legislative updates. The legislative, the law has changed and we have to change the language of the law in our,
right.
So I'm comfortable with that as long as
Can I finish just a minute? Not the customization of the policy. So I see the I just wanted to explain the differences too that I've seen on the sheets.
So I'm comfortable with that as I would be more comfortable with that if the policy committee had gone through and looked at those and made sure that they're just those small changes.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Right, and so that's what we're doing now. And that's what Scott and Dan are doing, actually. They're going through as well and recommending them to the policy group as well. Right. And so when we look at them as a group, we say, okay, these are just the legislative updates. Let's send those to the board and see if we can fast track those. That way we can just get those done, because the rest of them might take 3 readings for sure. So yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing.
One thing that I sort of was hesitating to bring up, but I think I will, because it could resolve this, or sort of the best of both worlds. We could also stagger these, right? We could have a first reading of 10 policies tonight, another first reading of 10 new policies in February, along with the second reading of tonight's 10 policies, right? And if we staggered them, we would ultimately be able to proceed pretty quickly, even if we did continue with the original prescribed 3 readings, because they're, you know, they're sort of all queuing up and working their way through. But it's
Right.
also complicated, right?
Jonathan?
Because on any given night, you might have 30 different policies in first reading, 10 second, et cetera, right? So that's the downside to that approach.
Jonathan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fairly common process, fairly common procedure back in the day. We would have on our agendas, we'd have first, second, and third reading, first, second, and final readings on the same agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I would propose that, and I would, whatever we do, I want to remember our last board training. Let's not make any more work for the administration. Their first, second, third, fourth, and fifth job is to work on the reopening plans. So let's not put any more work on their plate.
Yes, Jennifer.
I guess if that had been past practice, it hadn't been a practice when I was necessarily on the board, or at least a common practice. I'm totally happy with having a rolling first, second, third readings, all, you know, everything kind of mixed in. That it is complicated and people need to realize that it's complicated, but I wouldn't mind it personally.
I'd be in favor as well. I think it would actually sort of optimize the process while following the policy to the letter.
So I wanted to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I did send to the policy work group. I looked back on our agendas for the past 3 years. And when we were going through our overhaul of the policies, and I sent several examples of what the agenda looked like regarding you know, first, second, and third readings, and when we pulled one out, and we had to discuss it and how that was laid out. I sent that to the policy work group as examples. And so I don't know if Lori wants to speak to that, or I think we do also have some of the policy work group committee members here in the audience, and I don't know if we want to maybe entertain them joining in this conversation. It might help to have some clarity, some more clarity, or if Dan or Scott wants to chime in, might help a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know what you're saying, Shelley. I just, being on the policy committee, I think we are helping our administrators by bringing these forward for maybe possibly 2 readings if the board agrees, especially when they are just specifically legal language. That's where OSBA comes in and finesses that. I think we're very careful in the policy committee about which policies that the board can comfortably sculpt to the needs of the district and the board within its parameters. And that's why we have these, I would be hesitant just to approve them on the first reading. I'm a little, I would be very hesitant, but I think having it on the second reading to approve would be completely reasonable if these are about legal language. Other things, yes, take probably the full 3 readings. So just to confirm, we are helping our administrators by applying it in this way, hopefully putting it in the queue and wrapping it up on the second reading. But also we are careful about what policies that we're asking to have approved by 2 readings. I hope I got that right. But anyway, that's my 2 bits. Thank you.
I just
Thanks,
have
Diane.
a
Go ahead, Diane.
clarifying question in terms of process. So when I read these policies ahead, there were 2 of them where I found there was like duplicative language. So it was just it was a typo, it's a grammatical issue, whatever. Should I provide that input to either Debbie or Scott or the policy committee ahead of our first reading? Or should we consider that, even if it's just a kind of a clerical cleanup, do we consider that as a board and then bump it to a second one? Because I think some of those things, if they could be addressed ahead of time, we could just blow things through. But like for tonight, there are 2 of them where there were some small issues. And for instance, we wouldn't be ready to approve them tonight as they are.
Right.
I guess we could approve them with suggested changes, but that always seems a little.
One thing I will try to really have us avoid is wordsmithing via board meeting, right? I think it'll be hard to do. I think these are sometimes kind of nuanced languages. I do think, Janet, if you sent that information to Debbie ahead of time, nothing could be wrong with that, especially if it's grammatical stuff, right?
Okay.
And this is the key, I think if there is any amount of concern about the actual content of the policy,
right,
then we have a decision to make. Discuss it as a board, or do we send it back to the policy work group to have a conversation and then bring it back to the board, right? So I'd be in favor, I think, of the latter personally, but I'd be open to other ideas there as well.
I think for some, Jonathan, that's very workable. I mean, I don't think all the policies need to go back. I hope I interpreted what you said correctly, but I do believe that some of these policies can be adopted on the second reading if it's something as minimal that doesn't change the body and content of the policy itself. Like, for instance, if Janet brought in before her grammatical considerations, or if it was just a legal word where they striked it and would like you to use this instead of that. So, and also I'd like to just put out, I'm trying to go around the cul-de-sac here, but I heard one of the board members mention the policy committee. We do have some community members on there, and it would be nice if they were able to attend a work session with some of the policies that I feel are have more content morphing going on and tailoring, if that makes sense. But for right now, I would be happy with 2 readings on the ones brought before us. And some will need 3. And so with these, I feel like 2 readings is acceptable.
You're right. Yeah. And I think Jennifer, just one sec, I saw your hand. What I'm hearing here is that there are at least two distinct different pieces that we're trying to, I think we're combining them in our commentary, but one is sort of the 2 versus 3 readings, right? That's one.
Right.
Question mark. And then the second one had to do with Janet's comment around, well, what if there's both grammatical and or more actual content changes that are being recommended, right? And I think in that case, right, that has nothing to do with how many readings exactly. That has more to do with just process, right? And I think for grammatical, I saw some of the things Janet's talking about. Those things need to, they need to go back to Debbie. She put together the markup. We'll clean them up ahead of a second reading, for example. But
Correct.
if there's, whoa, like this language, right? Then the question is, do we, maybe we have a brief conversation as a board, and if there's not any obvious direction, we just sort of kick it back. That particular policy, we kick back to the policy work group for a conversation, right? That seems logical to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree.
Jonathan, if I could just chime in real quick, I want to be sure that we're using the right terminology to define the work group, because it is a superintendent's work group, and we need to be careful about saying committee. Just something we really need to think about being consistent with. A committee would imply that we are a board sanctioned committee with board members, and that would require public meeting laws and everything else. So we need to make sure that we're referring to this as a superintendent's work group, which means that I set the agenda, and then I would be the one reporting back to the board about the policy. It wouldn't be appropriate to have members of the work group present to the board about those policies. Since it's a superintendent's work group, that would need to be me.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes sense. So Jennifer, yes.
I can be totally flexible on this because I get the whole practicality nature. I just am a little nervous about those last lines that say, when in the best interest of the district, immediate adoption of a proposed policy is necessary, the board may adopt such a policy at the first or second meeting in which it is presented. This phrase, when in the best interest of the district, it seems like it's reserving that kind of maneuver for something like the COVID policies that we adopted recently. So that's just my hesitation, is that it's not necessarily the letter of our policy, but I do understand the practicality side. I just want to make sure that point came out in the discussion.
Thank you.
Jonathan, could I interject something just to kind of echo Tom's comment about what our priorities are related to reopening schools in this conversation of kind of where we're at. Scott and we've kind of back and forth a couple of different options. I mean, part of it, we kind of took a get her done approach and wanted just to kind of get through as many of these with as minimal readings, sort of in an effort to kind of get it, there is a backlog, and to try to get it off our plate a little bit. But kind of hearing some of the conversation going on, here's my ask, and Scott, if I misspeak, please correct me, is if the idea of going towards a third reading, I think it would be easier on Scott, Debbie, and myself if we had a very systematic approach to this. So it's not sometimes it's 2 and sometimes it's 3. I heard some coalescing around this idea of a rotation process. But I think that for Scott and I and the work we're doing, we either need to take an approach that we really want to get these adopted quickly so that we can kind of have a sense of accomplishment and be done. Or if the board's not comfortable with that approach, that we take a really systematic approach of a certain number rotating through with 3 readings. But I don't think we can I know it would be hard on our team to try to figure out kind of which one's a 2 and which one's a 3. I think that would get confusing for board members potentially, and I know it would get confusing for our team.
Very well said. Thank you.
Then I think that we can support the Office of the Superintendent in presenting these in the manner that makes the best sense to them.
It makes sense to me, and as long as I'm not hearing any objection from board members on a revolving sort of first readings and second readings and things like that, we can manage that. When we meet and discuss agendas, Scott and Dan and Jennifer and I can talk through which ones are pertinent, which ones are ready, which, and we can make sure that those agendas are clear and that those are available to the board members well in advance of the meetings, of course, to Shelley's point, so that there's plenty of time to review them. And then, so unless I'm hearing objection, that feels reasonable to me. And that keeps us within the letter of the law of our policy as well. So.
I was just going to mention that it's better to err on the side of doing all 3 readings if there's any question at all. It is best practice. And that has been drilled into our head by OSBA for years. So, if there are policies and the policy work group, they know that. And, when we have discussions in our group, which are really, really good discussions in my opinion, we do, agree on most things on how to move forward in the best way that works for, Scott and Dan. At least I think so. If I'm incorrect, correct me. The other thing is this is, Scott, yes, this is a policy work group, a superintendent policy work group. This is not a committee, that is correct. But my thought process about talking with a couple of other of the members of our group was purely for a proactive information gathering for our board. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I thought we had discussed that in our policy work group and it was received well, but apparently not. So, I think that we need to talk about that because I think it would help board members understand information that might not be shared in a discussion like this for them to hear as well. So, to give our board members all of the information that maybe we might not remember is what my goal is. So I just wanted to respond to that.
I agree, Shelley. And if we have plenty of time to plan for that and that's what we would like to do, then I'm totally open to that piece too.
Okay, well,
I just want to be clear on that point. We just wouldn't want to call on members if they're not prepared to speak off the cuff. We just want to make sure that we're prepared well in advance for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So based on everything I heard, I think we can, I feel like I have enough information to move us forward with these batches of policies that are going to be forthcoming. So what I'd like to do is move us along to the actual discussion items then tonight, which are these 8 policies. And my thinking on this, and again, I'm open to feedback, is that we're not really going to talk about each policy, right? We're not going to stop and talk about each one. What I'm going to say is we have these 8, and if there's content concerns, we should bring them up and have public dialogue on the matter. If there are typographical, grammatical concerns, I think we should all feel free to email, Debbie, this is a first reading. We'll get it cleaned up. We'll re-review that, make sure those changes were handled by the second reading, for example. But I wouldn't necessarily want to take up board time walking through all of those. I don't think that's necessarily pertinent. Anybody have a concern with how I've framed that?
I'm always concerned that if we don't do something in public, it's not the right thing. So I just want to put that on record that if we don't do something in public, whether it's a wordsmithing or grammar in public, and we send it back to the correct people, I don't think that's in the best, in my opinion. It's not in the best interest of our job to not do that. It is we have to be public about everything. And if we start choosing not to do that, whether it's to change there and there, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with it, but I'm not, that's just my opinion, so.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So with that said, sorry, did somebody else say something?
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I started to utter something and my voice wasn't working. So are you going to, I guess I'm getting a little confused now since we have the policy work group. Are we going to be kicking back things to the policy work group? Or I guess, could you run through it again so I completely understand the process?
I'll summarize my current understanding. So my
Okay,
current understanding is we're going to process these with 3 readings per policy. We're not going to discuss whether they should be 2 or 3 on a per policy basis. We'll just stick with 3. And then what we'll do is we'll have a first reading that'll take place for typically a batch of these policies. Apologies, I'm getting an internet unstable message, so I don't know if you're hearing me. Everybody hearing me okay? No? Okay, sorry. It's delayed and I'm not sure what's going on. So I'll start this over again. Hopefully this is going to work better. We'll have the batch. If somebody has I'll call it a minor typographical concern, they can send a note off regarding that concern. On the second reading, and to Shelley's point, this will still be very public, that the updated second reading will be completely public, and we'll have maybe change bars on top of change bars, but we'll know what changed, right? We changed the word there to there. And the public can still review it. The board still is reviewing it. It's on board book. And we'll have the opportunity to then make sure and public comment, of course, is available. So, and then on the third reading, the assumption is typographical stuff has been dealt with. And if no board member has brought up concerns with the content, then it'll move straight forward to the third reading for adoption. If during first or second, or presumably third even, reading, a board member, or at least let's say a majority, have a concern that warrants kicking it back to the policy work group, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't see any reason not to assume that we should kick that back. And my personal deference would be if even maybe 1 or 2 people had a concern, I would vote in favor of that, right? Because I don't see a downside, and I don't think, given the policies I've seen, we're likely to see many of those. So anyway, does that, Lori, did that clarify?
Thank you. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So with that, my intent then tonight is to ask of the board, are there any substantive concerns with the changes as outlined on board book in the marked up versions that Debbie put together for us? That's, and then if the answer is no, I think our discussion on the policies, right? That's kind of how I'm viewing this.
Jonathan, I do not have any.
Thank you, Shelley. And I didn't either. I did pre-read them. I saw a couple of similar things probably to what Janet saw, and
yeah.
I'll send those along, but
it's
other
very
than that,
helpful.
I don't have any issues.
Perfect. Okay.
They look good here.
Thanks.
No issues.
Okay.
After
So-
my changes.
Right. So I really appreciate everybody's time working through the process piece. I wanted to make sure we had something in place with all of these coming. And so thank you. I know it was kind of confusing, but I think we landed on something that's going to work. Okay, well, if there's no objection, I'm going to move us to administrator and staff reports. And up we have Steve with the financial report.
Good evening, everyone, and just want to echo what others have said. Thank you all for your service to the students, family, and staff of the Silver Falls School District. It's a big commitment, and just want to personally thank you for that commitment. I have a heavy list of items to go over tonight. It would be anyway because I have the audited financial statement, but also because I was cut off about 30% of the way through my report last month. So I will wrap all of it together, but this is a presentation of the past with the audit report from 1920, as well as present, how we're doing halfway through fiscal year 2019, halfway through fiscal year 2020-21, and a look forward at where we're at and the challenges facing us into fiscal year 21-22. So I will start with the audit report, which is linked on Board Book, the full 74-page report in PDF format on Board Book. And I want to thank everyone on my team for helping get this project complete. It's always a heavy lift, and it feels good to get it behind us. The other document, I believe it's the third link, is the supplemental pages that always go to ODE as well. That's always a good detailed look at our expenses and revenue by fund as well. So those are the two items specifically linked there on Board Book. I will give you a brief guide through the document. We, as indicated on pages 73 and 74, which are the final 2 pages of the report, we received an unmodified opinion, which means a clean opinion with no reservations, which is great. We are in compliance with internal control over financial reporting and over major federal programs, and no material weaknesses or deficiencies were identified. That is reported on again in summary in the back, but also through the different notes section in the report. The audit has already been submitted to the Oregon Department of Education, the Oregon Secretary of State, and the Federal Audit Clearinghouse per Oregon state law. It is due within 180 days of the end of the fiscal year. Just a quick tour through the sections. As always, one area that's very helpful to read is the management discussion and analysis, which is actually something that we write up here in the Fiscal Services Department. It's after page 3 and is numbered starting with Roman numeral 1. That gives a good 20,000 foot overview of the activities for the year. Pages 4 and 5 are the government-wide financial statements. Pages 6 through 13 are the fund financial statements. Pages 7 and 7A specifically is an income statement on the general fund. Pages 14 to 43 are really the meat and potatoes informationally about how, not just how the financial statement is laid out, but how school finance in Oregon works. There's a lot in there about the requirements, our debt service, the PERS, the state PERS program. So there's a lot of boilerplate in there, but it's very helpful information to look at for anybody. And I do encourage you to take a look through that. The individual fund statements for all the rest of the funds are located on pages 42 through 65. And another page of note that's always helpful to look at is page 68, which is a required schedule. It's the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, otherwise known as the CFA, which shows that where our federal supplemental help is coming from. And Once again, we received about $1.8 million, title grants, special education supplement grants, namely IDEA, as well as our National School Lunch Reimbursement Program. So overall, it was a positive audit report, and I think, I could talk for an hour or two just on all the details, but I think it would be helpful to allow more time for you to digest the information as we move between this meeting and February. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or ask any questions at the next meeting as well. So before I move on to our current status, are there any immediate questions on the audited financial statement? Okay, I'm going to move forward to the December 31st year-to-date financial statements for fiscal year 2019-20. I was excited to report on November from the revenue standpoint because it's our biggest revenue month. Yes, we get our normal state school fund payment in November, but we also receive 80% plus of our property taxes in the month of November. And we receive a little bit into the first week of December as well. And then the rest of it comes in February and May. So we did stay on track with the property tax receipts, even in the midst of the pandemic. So that was good. You could see on the first page, the revenue dashboard summary, that our revenues are on pace with projected year-to-date revenues, which is basically a historical. The projection is framed off of our 5 or 6 year history with the timing of the receipts. So that's positive. We're on track, actually above target in local resources, and about almost right on par with the state resources. I do expect revenue to come in slightly below forecast because we will have a spring adjustment to our state school fund due to the fact that part of that number is a 70% reimbursement for transportation costs. And obviously on the expense side of the ledger, we are not spending as much as we would obviously with transportation. So we were reimbursed 70% of whatever we do spend through the state school fund. So whatever we don't spend is really a 30% savings, the difference. So that's important to know. So we will actually be a little less in state school fund revenue than budgeted once we hit the end of the year. Our enrollment is slightly lower than what we had planned on for, obviously it's much less than what we had planned on for this year, but we are being paid off of our 2019-20 enrollment, which was slightly less than what we had budgeted for this year. But obviously we set that number pre-pandemic, and I'll talk more about enrollment in a moment. So we'll also be less than forecast on interest revenue, but we also will be getting and have been getting CARES Act money. In fact, if we track that just within the general fund, that probably would get our revenue up to where we would have budgeted. We did find out this last week that we will be getting some additional CARES Act money through this latest round of stimulus. We don't know what the district allocations are, but we will find out from ODE next week. On the expense side, you can see on the dials on the top of the second page that we are about 2 percentage points or 2.5 percentage points below our projected year-to-date expenditures. And that goes directly down. If you look at the chart on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that our purchase services are quite a bit less than our projected year-to-date and also our budgeted year-to-date. And that's because, again, of transportation costs being less, as well as substitute costs. So that's where a lot of the differences are coming this year. As you can imagine, between COVID-related expenses and CARES Act money and FEMA and other things, CDL costs, then the other side being some costs that we're not spending as much on. There's just a lot of different things happening this year that is abnormal, obviously. So that kind of paints that picture. In fact, supplies, you would think, oh, we wouldn't be spending as much there, but again, that bar does reflect the fact that we do have COVID PPE related expenditures in there, and we do have reimbursement through CARES Act and FEMA money coming in, some of which we received, some of which we have not received. So there are some timing issues going on through there. And so even with those expenses, our overall expenditure profile is less than budget and less than where we would be projected to be through 6 months on a normal basis. The third page I really want to focus on to highlight the point of the expenditures. If you look at the total expenditures line item, if you look at prior year to date through 6 months, we were just under $17.8 million, whereas this year through December, we're at $17.1 million. So that really accentuates the point that I was just making. Usually with inflation and so on, you would be ahead of the previous year's pace. And again, you can see in that bottom right-hand graph, you can see it better because it's a bigger graph, that purchase services are quite a bit below where they would be, where they were prior year to date. So the other thing that I want to focus on this report is, now that our audit is over, you can see where our ending fund balance, or essentially our beginning fund balance for the 2021 school year, ended up. The top number under current year to date beginning fund balance, $2.2 million, which is less than what we budgeted. We budgeted $3.2 million. And as we were talking in the spring through the budget with all the uncertainty, as early as February, I had projected that we would be in the low to mid twos for our ending fund balance. That was before the pandemic hit. And then we talked about 2.8 to 3.2 when we found out about CARES Act money, as well as when we took furlough days. So the reason it didn't end up as high is because there were timing issues that occurred that we didn't know exactly how the CARES Act money would be awarded and administered, and no CARES Act money was received until after July 1st. But we did start to incur expenses before the end of the fiscal year. We also, with our furlough days, had some of that savings occur in July. So it occurred in June and July. And we had, as we had talked about, some staff that weren't eligible for work share, therefore they didn't take those furlough days. So as we talked about it in March and April, we weren't sure exactly how much we would save. We still saved a material amount, but there was also some timing issues there. And the last part that wasn't thought of at the time was we had a hit to our Medicaid funding, which is tracked in our Special Services Fund, Fund 200, or the Grants Fund. And that helps pay for our contracted nursing services, as well as some of our special needs assistance. But because of the pandemic, we weren't able to bill, and that's on a reimbursing basis as well. We were not able to bill for as many services as we normally would, and therefore we had to reclassify some of those costs to the general fund, which obviously then impacted the ending fund balance in a negative way. And that's still an issue that's carrying into this year, being in an online environment. And I'm working with our Special Services Director, Dana Peterson, to see what we could do to capture the funds that we can, now that we've started Lippy and those types of things. So that is an issue. That's a major issue. So that brought our ending fund balance down. But the thing that I would like to say is it's really important when we look at this number, to take a 2-year or a biennial view at this number. And of course, at June 30th, 2020, we were just halfway through the current biennium. You have to remember that the other major impacts were the fact that we were on a 49% funding level last year in 2019-20. This year, we're on a 51% funding level. And also last year, we settled the contract with SFEA. So that increased our expenses last year when we were at a lower funding level. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So we kind of had planets aligned in a way that would all take our ending fund balance down even further than we planned. But now we're in an environment where we are funded at the 51% level. And even though we are incurring costs related to COVID, we are getting quite a bit of that reimbursed through these various sources, and we're spending less in other areas. So we're now in an environment where we will be able to increase this number, I believe, to the neighborhood of 3.5 to 3.8 million early estimate, not by 3.5 to 3.8, but to 3.5 to 3.8 million by the end of the year. So if we look at it from a 2-year view, we started at 4.7 at the start of this biennium and hoping to end somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4.0. So I hope that makes sense in terms of, that's a snapshot in time and it's not a pretty one, 5% ending fund balance, but we knew it was going down in that direction. But I wanted to clarify some of the issues that, even after we were going to save a little bit of money through furlough days and other things, why we didn't end up closer to 3 rather than the closer to 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was fantastic. I was going to actually ask some of those questions you answered on your own anyway, so thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So really what that does is, I think the most important information that we can talk about tonight is where things are heading. I did not, because it was the last item on my list last month, I didn't get a chance to talk specifically about the enrollment report, which was a specific link on December's board meeting agenda.
Right.
It was through November 30th. And we had talked about enrollment at the previous meetings as well, but through November 30th, we were down 365 students from where we were on June 18th, 2020, or 9.3%. And as of today, we are down another 24 students. We are at 3,551. So obviously the huge question is, if we're bound to the ODE rules, we are not going to be covered by our safety that we have this year, which was the previous year. If the enrollment goes up, yes. If it's higher than this year, we will get whatever we have next year. But that's the question. What are we going to have? Because nobody has a crystal ball in terms of when we will get to come back in a more full model. Will we get to that point by the fall? Nobody knows. And so we right now are just starting to build, make assumptions for the build of a draft of a 21-22 budget. So we have to start with enrollment and revenues. Well, where do we go with that? We were talking about it quite a bit at cabinet this morning, and we'll be talking more with our principals as well. But if we were to come back in a more full model, I believe we'll get a pretty good number of those back. But I always like to be conservative. So where do we put that number? So we're still trying to figure that out. I've heard a lot of districts are going somewhere in between where they are right now and where they were. But this is not unique just to Silver Falls. We're hearing 6 to 10% drop for many, many districts across the state. So we'll see where we land on that. We'll probably end up creating 2 different scenarios. And I think that the other thing that I think is going to ramp up at the state level is the possibility of some sort of a hold harmless, which I think would be appropriate for the state to do. And we have a meeting with ODE and business officials across the state every second or third Friday of the month. And we have one this Friday, and I think it will come up again. It's been asked already. The second period ADM data for all school districts in the state were due today. So I don't think that they have the complete data set yet. I don't think they realize that, I think they were reporting statewide was down maybe 7,000, I think was the number, but I think it's going to be more now when they get this data set. So I think they're going to have to talk more about, to try to hold districts somewhat harmless to this impact. They're going to have to talk about it. That's not a promise, but it's certainly a discussion that's occurring right now. So we'll see where that goes, and I will keep you updated on that. And like I said, there's some more CARES Act money coming. I'll let you know when we get a number for our allocation on that. And I think really that's the big thing moving forward, is just the uncertainty, obviously, and it just fits in with everything else. There's uncertainty with reopening. There's obviously brings a lot of uncertainty with the financial piece. So we're in the early stages, and just like reopening, we learn more on this side of the game every day as well. So hopefully that helps kind of frame it up for you. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Steve?
I have a question. So Steve, on the hold harmless idea, I'm just trying to envision kind of what that could look like. Like instead of 21-22 using ADM from this year, it might skip back to pre-pandemic ADM in order to fund schools.
You mean how they could craft a hold harmless?
Yeah.
I think so. I think honestly, that they if I were to design it, I would say you go with 21-22 or 19-20, whichever's higher. Forget about 19-20 or 20-21, excuse me. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So
Yeah.
that's a political issue,
Yeah.
fellow board members. So we might want to follow that.
Yes. But I hope that there's, we can push enough, stir the conversation enough through our conversations with ODE as well as COSA and OSBA that it becomes a serious item to discuss in the legislative session.
Well,
sorry, Irv, did you have your hand raised there?
Well, I think this question was actually more for Scott, but you're the blunt of it because you're the money man. Have we surveyed, or are we going to survey those 389 students who left, and what's the possibility of coming back?
Yes, in fact, they were part of the survey that was sent out last Friday, Irv, and we'll get those responses back this Friday. Also, just want to let everybody know that we translated them into Spanish and made individual phone calls on that front as well. So we're expecting all of that back by Friday.
And that would be a whole nother tricky piece to the budget and the planning that's kind of tricky like everything else would be. We do have to anticipate quite a bit larger a kindergarten class next year. So that's the grade obviously that's down the most. For example, Mark Twain usually has 120. They have 63 this year. So a lot of parents have held their children back, obviously. So we have to anticipate a much larger kindergarten class, and then that class is going to be larger all the way through the system. And so the staffing for next year would look a little bit different at particular schools, perhaps. And then, of course, with the kindergarten piece, now we're already working through kind of the K-5 and getting those set. So just kind of an interesting dynamic.
Hey, Steve, weren't we planning on having kindergarten larger anyway before pre-pandemic and looking at those numbers and staffing?
Oh, you mean just
for-
just in general, like with growth?
Mhm.
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that actually, I feel like it was a couple of years ago, but we had been planning for that, and now the pandemic hit, and it could be even bigger
Mm-hmm.
than we anticipated. So, okay, lots of complexities to think about. Wow, thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
So I had one question, Steve, regarding the CARES Act money. Right now, it's out there, but they probably haven't even given a hint of how much is going to be, I guess, allocated to each district, or how it's going to be utilized, I guess is what it's.
Well, the parameters will be very similar to the first pool. Well, there's actually one pool, but they separated into two. They had what's called ESSER and then GEAR, which was the governor's part. It was a smaller amount. So it was kind of two pieces out of the first pot, and then this will be the second allocation. I believe the amount for schools, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you were on the call. Was it 500 million?
Yeah, it was
statewide.
Yeah, I believe that was 5 times the amount that we got in June.
So they said they were going to allocate it in the same way. I think it's based on some Title I percentage allocation. I'll have to double check that, Lori, but it will be similar to what it was the first time. And they're hoping to have those calculations within the next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I will let everyone know as soon as we find out.
Right.
Board, I just wanted to say thank you to Steve publicly. Steve is managing a very, very difficult situation financially for our district, and I'm so thankful and grateful that he's on our team and looking over things. And Steve's also a heck of a teacher as well, so bringing us all along and explaining the nuances of public school finance in a global pandemic. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks, Steve. We'll move on to board reports. If anybody has anything that they would like to share with their fellow board members tonight.
I have something I'd like to share.
Yep.
I wanted to thank all of the community members who have sent in emails or have made phone calls into the district to express their desires regarding opening our schools and also CDL. I appreciate the professional dialogue, different perspectives, and clear information. I just wanted to let's continue to have good positive dialogue moving forward and working together. I've had many conversations with community members, and I'm very appreciative of their thoughts about this difficult time. And if there's any reason to really work together through a tough situation, this is one. So I wanted to thank the community and families in our district. And I also wanted to mention something about January school board. Thank you, your school board member month. So many believe that being a school board member is a thankless job. I want to debunk that comment in regards to me. I constantly get thank yous from so many in our community about being a board member. It is my pleasure to work for you and be here. Thank you for the cards and multiple messages from many, many community members. And I just wanted to thank Silverton High School for sending out this thank you card. I don't know if everybody can see it, but it was a lovely card to get. And we've gotten something every year from our students. Beautiful paintings or crayon colorings, cards, t-shirts, things like that. And, you know, in such a really difficult time, I think receiving some of these makes my job, at least for me, much easier, and I want to come to it every other week or twice a month. So thank you to the community, the families, teachers, staff, administration. Thank you very much for thanking me and us for volunteering to do this position. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other board reports tonight? Okay. We will move into our second public comment. Now this one's limited to discussion and action items, of which we don't actually have any action items tonight. So discussion items, I guess. And I won't reread the blurb from before, but Debbie, has anybody requested an audience tonight with us?
No.
Okay. With that, we will move into other items. Are there any other items that we need to discuss tonight? Okay. Well, without objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Great work tonight.
Thank you, board members. I know it's after the meeting's been adjourned, but thank you all so very much. And as your HR director, I will work on getting that raise that you've been asking for.
That's a joke, everybody.
It's a
no
joke.
pay.
Yes.
Thank you.
10% raise on zero is still zero. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.